Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Thank you, Bala. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotarsha Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Founder Acharya Srila Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotarsha Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantarad Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 15, Texts 14 and 15. It's a very long prose, so I'll just read the translation. In the womb of Gayanti, Maharaj Gaya begot 3 sons, named Chitra Rata, Sugati, and Avarodhan. In the womb of his wife Urna, Chitra Rata begot a son named Samrat. The wife of Samrat was Utkala, and in her womb Samrat begot a son named Marichi. In the womb of his wife Bindu Mati, Marichi begot a son named Bindu. In the womb of his wife Saraga, Bindu begot a son named Madhu. In the womb of his wife named Sumana, Madhu begot a son named Viravrata. In the womb of his wife Boja, Viravrata begot 2 sons named Mantu and Pramantu. In the womb of his wife Satya, Mantu begot a son named Bhauvana. And in the womb of his wife Dushana, Bhauvana begot a son named Twishta. And in the womb of his wife Virochana, Twishta begot a son named Viraj. The wife of Viraj was Vishuchi. Thank you. And in her womb Virat begot 100 sons and 1 daughter. Of these sons, the son named Shatajit was predominant. I'll read the next verse also. There is a famous verse about King Viraj. Because of his high qualities and wide fame, King Viraj became the jewel of the dynasty of King Priyavrata, just as Lord Vishnu, by his transcendental potency, decorates and blesses the demigods. Purport. Within a garden, a flowering tree attains a good reputation because of his fragrant flowers. Similarly, if there is a famous man in a family, he is compared to a fragrant flower in a forest. Because of him, an entire family can become famous in history. Because Lord Krishna took birth in the Yadu dynasty, the Yadu dynasty and the Yadavas have remained famous for all time. Because of King Viraj's appearance, the family of Maharaj Priyavrata has remained famous for all time. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. I was born in darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So the other day, Mahabharat Prabhu and I were talking in the kitchen, and we're talking about superheroes. And everyone wants to become a hero, or they want to look up to a hero. So what defines a hero? A hero is someone that has noble qualities, strength, and someone who is admired for courage. Someone who saves the distressed, weak, and also shows compassion to even his enemies. And when we hear or read about Krishna's Leela, we find out that he is not an ordinary personality. He is a supreme personality of Godhead. And as a kid, we would discuss, what type of superpowers we would like. Be able to turn invisible, to have X-ray vision, to be the strongest, to be able to teleport anywhere at any time, to have telepathic powers, and so on. To be the strongest, fastest. So we want to be unique among the rest. And whether the world knows it or not, Krishna possesses all these superpowers. He is the supreme superhero. And what's even sweeter is that we're all part and parcel of Krishna. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. It is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. So we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. And an example is given that a small spark of fire from a blazing fire, or the small particle of sunshine from the sun. And it's funny because a lot of these superheroes nowadays, they have weaknesses. Superman, he is pretty much crippled or paralyzed when there's kryptonite. Aquaman, when he's stays too long away from water, he becomes weak. The Flash, Batman, Spider-Man, they're all human beings. And it says that And people forget that since they're human beings, they have to die one day. But Krishna, he knows all of our thoughts. I'm seated in everyone's heart as a super soul. Krishna controls this whole cosmic manifestation. He says this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. Just by Krishna's will, millions of planets stay within their orbit. So that's power, that's strength. And Krishna is the strongest because he says, Sattvam Sattvatam Aham. I am the strength of the strong. So Lord Krishna should be our hero, our best friend, our life and soul. And like I mentioned before, the superheroes, they're mortal, so they can't escape death. But Krishna, he says, Mrityu Sarva Harashchaham. I'm all-devouring death. And when we study the pastimes of Krishna, there's no comparison. When Krishna was just 7 years old, he lifted Govardhana Hill with his pinky finger, his left pinky finger, for 7 days and 7 nights to protect his family and friends from the thunderstorm created by King Indra. And there's another, so I'll discuss a few pastimes. Kamsa was Krishna's uncle, and he was actually a demon. So he sent a witch named Putana to kill all the children, to find them in villages, cities, pasturing grounds. And it says that she knew the black art of killing children. And such witches can play their black art only when there is no chanting or hearing of the holy name of Krishna. It is said that wherever the chanting of the holy name of Krishna is done, even negligently, all bad elements, witches, ghosts, and dangerous calamities immediately disappear. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this witch Putana, she entered Gokula, and she dressed herself as a very beautiful woman. She had the power to disguise herself, and the Vrajabasis thought she was the goddess of fortune. She was very beautiful. And Putana, she wanted to kill Krishna by smearing very powerful poison on her breasts. She took little baby Krishna on her lap and began feeding him. Krishna closed his eyes, and what happened? Krishna sucked the life force out of Putana. So it says there are 7 kinds of mothers according to Vedic injunction. The real mother, the wife of a teacher or spiritual master, the wife of a king, the wife of a brahmana, the cow, the nurse, and Mother Earth. So these are the 7 mothers. And because Putana came to take Krishna on her lap and offer her breast milk, she was accepted by Krishna as one of his mothers. As she died screaming, there was a tremendous vibration on the earth and in the sky, on the upper and lower planets, in all directions. And the people thought that thunderbolts were falling. And it's described that Putana's body extended up to 12 miles in length. So imagine that. Krishna is amazing. And Mother Yashoda and Rohini picked up little Krishna, and they performed auspicious rituals to protect Krishna. They began chanting the different names of Vishnu all over his body to protect him. They did not know that Krishna is a protector of everyone. And there's another demon named Trinavarta. He was a whirlwind demon. So this Trinavarta demon went high into the sky with baby Krishna on his shoulder. And then Krishna, he assumed a very such a weight that he couldn't go any further. It was described that he felt like a huge mountain. So he stopped the whirlwind demon, and baby Krishna, he caught hold of his neck. And Trinavarta fell, hitting the slab like a rock, and it actually killed him. And after he was killed, they burned the body. And also Putana, when they burned her body as well, even though she was a demon, described that fragrance came out of her body. So she was purified when she was killed by Krishna. So who can be more merciful than Krishna to deliver even his enemies? And there's also a pastime of this demigod. His name is Vidyadhara. He was cursed to take the form of a snake. So once upon a time, the cowherd men of Vrindavan, they wanted to check out this festival called the Shiva Rati ceremony out of curiosity. The cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, spent that night on the bank of the Saraswati. They fasted all day and drank a little water at night. But while they were taking rest, a great serpent from the nearby forest appeared before them and began to swallow up Nanda Maharaj. Nanda Maharaj cried out helplessly, "My dear son Krishna, please come and save me from this danger. This serpent is swallowing me." At that time, Krishna appeared on the scene, and he touched the serpent with his lotus feet. Immediately upon being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna, the serpent began to shed his reptile body, and appeared a very beautiful demigod named Vidyadhara. His bodily features were so beautiful that he appeared to be worshipable. There was luster and effulgence emanating from his body, and he was garlanded with a gold necklace. He offered obeisances to Lord Krishna and stood before him with great humility. Krishna then asked the demigod, "You appear to be a very nice demigod and to be favored by the goddess of fortune. How is it that you perform such abominable activities that you got the body of a serpent?" So the demigod began to narrate his story. He said that in his previous life, he was very proud of his beauty. And there was a sage named Angira Muni. He was very ugly. And Vidyadhara, he was proud of his beauty. So he laughed at him. And due to the sinful act, he was condemned by the great sage to assume the form of a serpent. You know, we always hear that don't make fun of others, you know. Despite their bodily features, we should still respect them. And after this, Vidyadhara circumambulated Krishna and asked for permission to return to his heavenly abode. So when we hear how Krishna easily kills demons, how he also liberates them, our heart should naturally be attracted. We should be eager to hear the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Krishna swallowing up a forest fire to save his friends from danger. Krishna danced on a 100-hooded serpent named Kaliya. Krishna easily displayed the cosmos to his mother by opening his mouth. There are so many wonderful pastimes of Krishna, but unfortunately, people do not want to hear about Krishna. They would rather hear, watch, or read about science fiction or some character created by someone's imagination. I was distributing books yesterday, and I asked this young man, "Would you like a book?" And he looked at the sign and he said, "No, I don't want to read that." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I don't want to read about culture, religion, or meditation." So I asked him, "What do you like to read about?" So he started naming things, and I told him, "Those are all useless." Like that. He said, "What do you mean?" So I told him, "How will this help you at the time of death?" So he looked at me with eyes like it was a nice reminder for him. He didn't take a book, but he was able to hear that. And there's another story of Rukmini Devi. She had never seen Krishna. She doesn't know how Krishna looks like. But simply by hearing about Krishna, she was attracted. And she was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna. And by hearing about Krishna, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. And she had a brother named Rukmi. And Rukmi was trying to arrange her marriage to this personality named Shishupal. And he was an enemy of Krishna. Rukmini, she didn't like the proposal, so she sent a message to Krishna by sending a Brahmin as her messenger. Rukmini suggested that Krishna come there incognito to kidnap her and then fight with Shishupal and his allies. To avoid the unnecessary killing of her relatives, Rukmini suggested that it would be easiest for him to kidnap her from the palace to the temple. And it's described that Krishna took Rukmini away exactly as a lion takes a deer among the midst of jackals. So when we hear Krishna's pastimes, there's everything in there. Heroism, you can say love stories, things like that. And the common man, they're attracted to these so-called love stories. The man loses the wife or the girl, and then the whole movie is about him getting her back. But they don't know that the origin is from Krishna. And then there are the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. Rama, Lord Ram, he angrily fired this weapon to this demon named Maricha. The demon was struck by the mighty missile, and he was lifted and flung a distance of 800 miles. 800 miles, landing in the ocean. And although reeling and struck senselessly by Ram's arrow, Maricha was not killed. Rama looked at Lakshman, and he said, "See the force of that weapon, my brother." He easily hurled the demon to a vast distance. So, Lord Ram Chandra, he's not an ordinary person also. He's a Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it says, Ram and Lakshman continuously discharged flaming arrows at the other Rakshasas. Imbued with mystic power, one arrow expanded into thousands. It appeared as if a continuous line of shafts was leaving Ram's bow. And Krishna's pastimes and incarnations are unbelievable. We can go on and on discussing them. And Chanakya Pandit, he says, be lenient with the son for the first 5 years. For the next 10 years, be very strict. When the son reaches the age of 16, treat him like a friend. So we can see Srila Prabhupada treated his disciples in this way. In the early days, the hippies, they didn't know how to worship Krishna. They didn't know anything about devotional service. Just like a child, he doesn't know any better. So you have to be lenient with them for the first 5 years. And when they understood Krishna consciousness a little further, Srila Prabhupada was very strict with them. He set standards. And then he would treat them as if friends, even though they're not on the same level. And discipline builds character. Just like here in the ashram, we wake up a certain time, we go to sleep, we honor prasad. And when I meet people on book distribution, I tell them that we don't have beds, we don't have mattresses, we sleep on the floor. So they see the austerity and they're very attracted to it. And Chanakya Pandit, he also says, what use is a cow who cannot conceive and cannot give milk? What is the use of the birth of a son who is neither a scholar nor a devotee of the Lord? So to Srila Prabhupada, a learned scholar is a devotee. And Prabhupada says, one who has become a scholar but not a devotee is useless. In the material world, parents are often eager to conceive children, but they do not know how painful it will be if their children grow up to be useless. Just like on book distribution, I explained to people that these books, you start to develop good qualities: tolerance, patience, compassion, freedom from anger and envy. And I tell them that a person may be very beautiful. He may look very pretty, very handsome. But if they have no good qualities, he's compared to a very beautiful flower with no fragrance. They're nice to look at, but there's nothing there. And beauty fades throughout time. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it also describes a great king. His name is King Chitraketu. So he and his wife, they couldn't conceive children, so they begged Angira Muni to bless them to have a son. Angira Muni understood that according to the king's karma, Chitraketu was not meant to have children, but since he insisted, he blessed his wife so that she could conceive. But he warned them that their son would be the cause of both jubilation and lamentation. Chitraketu heard the sage's words, and then he rationalized that it didn't matter whether his son was disobedient or defective in any way. And he reasoned that a blind uncle was better than no uncle at all. So King Chitraketu had a son with his wife, but the other queens, they became jealous and envious of the king because he was now spending time with this particular queen. So they ended up poisoning the baby. And so Narada Muni, he appeared, and by his mystic power, he revived the living entity, and he asked him to enter the dead body for a short time. And the living entity spoke, and he started giving transcendental knowledge to his parents. He says, according to the results of fruit of activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes in the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two as my parents? So many people, they're attached to their family, but this is the truth. We had previous families before. In this material world, which advances like a river that carries away the living entity, all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They also act neutrally. They mediate. They despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Nonetheless, despite these various transactions, no one is permanently related. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that the material world is so polluted that one wants a son even though he is useless. Sometimes these foolish sons become the enemy of the family and causes bitterness in family life. And in the Hitopadesha, it states a similar version. What is the use of a son who is neither glorious nor devoted to the Lord? Such a son is like a blind eye, which simply gives pain but cannot help one to see. And in the Mahabharata, there's a personality named Duryodhana, and he was a cause downfall for his whole family. He was envious and he was not a devotee. And he and his uncle, they tried to conspire plots on how to kill the Pandavas. And Duryodhana, he was basically causing his family to be ruined. And Vidura warned Dhritarashtra to reject Duryodhana. Vidura said, "You are maintaining offense personified, Duryodhana, as your infallible son, but he is envious of Lord Krishna. Relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do good to the whole family." So he told him to leave him, to reject him. But Dhritarashtra, he was so attached to Duryodhana. And Srila Prabhupada, he maintained his non-devotee children until he was 50 years old. Then he took sannyas. So, however, if the son is demonic, the parents should reject that child. There's a pastime of King Anga. He was the father of Vena. And Vena, he was very demoniac. He would kill his schoolmate friends. And he was actually a rogue and a rascal. So Maharaj Anga, he abandoned his home life and went to the forest out of grief for his bad son. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he picked up so many worthless sons and daughters. He didn't reject them, but he trained them to become devotees. When my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhadrinarayan Swami Maharaj, he gave a lecture, and he titled it Honor, Duty, and Sacrifice. So I started using that on book distribution. I tell them that these books, they help you to live a life full of honor, duty, and sacrifice. And that life is not meant to be lived in a selfish way. When people hear that, they appreciate it. And I've been distributing books more just by this one line. And it gives them a chance to give in charity. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, charity, penance, and austerity should never be given up. Acts of charity purify even the great souls. So sadhus and devotees, they have the responsibility to give this advice to parents, even if it's rejected. And nowadays, parents are more likely to regret or disown their children for becoming devotees of the Lord. And we have all heard stories of how the devotees, when they become devotees, their parents, they become enemies. They try to, program them? Deprogram. They would hire people to kidnap them. They would make them watch all these horrible things. And There are many instances where materialistic parents regret seeing that all their material training has gone in vain. So in this situation, the shloka is reversed. The parents regard the devotees as useless, and they prefer to have a son who is neither educated nor inclined for spiritual life. So we can measure attachments in 3 stages. There's family attachment, there's detachment, and then there is something greater, which is attachment to Krishna within the family circle. In the West, parents don't value a learned son or a bhakta. They value someone who pursues material life with passion. And parents, they want their children to be successfully financially, and they want their sons to have materially successful friends, and they want them to become famous. But they don't tell them that one day all this will end. Srila Prabhupada was very lenient. He did whatever he could to start the Krishna consciousness movement by giving everyone a chance to freely engage in Krishna's service. We are unqualified and we are also disqualified in so many ways. But Srila Prabhupada accepted their sincerity, even if their practices were not up to standards. In the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Rupa Goswami, he advised that one should avoid the association of non-devotees and associate with devotees of the Lord. So why do we avoid the association of non-devotees? When we associate with non-devotees, it's harder to remember the temporality of this material world. Just like non-devotees, if your friends are only concerned with movies, playing video games, skateboarding, finding a girlfriend or boyfriend, then your mind will eventually start thinking of these also. And then one forgets his duties, his responsibilities, his vows to his spiritual master. He slowly drifts off in the ocean of material existence. And then when devotional service presents itself, he's too busy, thinking, planning, and concocting his own way of preaching. Coming to the temple will feel like a hassle, a burden, a lower or less priority in life, and then he becomes a karmi. We should always remember that the world is temporary and we should live for eternality. And to become attached to Vrindavan instead of our home in the West, we should chant Hare Krishna even if we don't always have the desire. Srila Prabhupada, he says that the world is miserable for the materially infected person, but for a devotee, the entire world is as good as Vaikuntha, or the spiritual sky. Because a devotee, he can see Krishna's energy and representatives. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the light of the sun and moon, fire. I am the original fragrance of the earth, and among bodies of water I am the ocean. So in our daily activities, we should try to see Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, and see if they are pleased. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Srila Prabhupada, he says, dreaming is always temporary. We must know that whatever we possess, whatever we are seeing, these are all dreams. They're temporary. So without cultivating Krishna consciousness, we only create karma for another birth in the miserable temporary world. And I went on books yesterday, and I told this lady that one book can change your life. One book can change someone's life. One page can change someone's life. So I told them these books are very powerful. So they took the stack, they took a Bhagavad Gita, and they thanked me. And when I was distributing books in La Jolla Cove, there was this little girl. She saw that her older sister had gotten a book. So she asked if she can take a book. So I gave her a book, Spiritual Yoga. And a few hours later, she comes back, she taps me on the shoulder, and she gives me something. She drew a picture for me. And in the back, it said, thank you for the free book. And then she said, bye, have a nice day, stay safe. So when you meet people, you should always leave a nice impression. So then, I'll show you later. It looked like the beach, and then she drew the umbrella on my table. I guess she drew me. And then so the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is dedicated in trying to save people from the repetition of birth and death. So the injunction to associate with devotees means practicing devotional service together. It doesn't mean to watch the Super Bowl together. It doesn't mean to Krishnaize American culture, to be in front of a television together watching mundane. Ultimately means mundane television means Maya. When I started Krishna consciousness, or before Krishna consciousness, I gave away my bed, my TV, my dresser. I stopped watching TV because I knew all of that was garbage. So for a devotee, pious activities means distributing the holy names, distributing prasadam, distributing books, and by building or maintaining temples. These are the pious deeds that Srila Prabhupada asked his followers to perform. And there's a misconception also that when people perform pious activities, they go to the spiritual world, but they don't. They go to the heavenly world. And Krishna says, Shene punye martya lokam vishanti. When all of their pious activities have been exhausted, they come back to this mortal planet again. But in this Kali Yuga, the chances of taking a good birth are getting fewer and fewer. What can a good birth mean in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, when practically all nations in the world are torn apart by war, or famine, or mortal or natural disaster? We could be living in a country that suddenly experiences economic collapse due to the collective karma of the population. We could be living in a country that suddenly finds itself at war. Or the modes could sweep us away into impious indulgence, and we could find ourselves taking birth in the lower species of life. It is difficult to die and just difficult to take birth again. And this is pretty interesting. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, it describes the Kali Yuga, the nature of the Kali Yuga. It says that in the Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities, and law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. The principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. As the earth becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. So eventually, one who takes birth in the heavenly planets and engages in sense gratification, they're forced to come back to the planet Earth when Kali Yuga is even more advanced. So we should be anxious to hear the activities of Krishna and his pure devotees, follow their instruction, and remember what the real purpose of life is. People are reading magazines, cartoons, comic books about superheroes, so why not connect them to Krishna, who is the source of all beauty, strength, knowledge, fame, wealth, and renunciation. And I'll end with a few Sankirtan stories. Yesterday at Balboa Park, I was calling this group over, and the last person was a nurse. So I told her, why did you become a nurse? And she said, I want to help people. So I said, good. So I handed her the book, and I said, these books, they'll help you to become very helpful in people's lives. So I was talking to her, and then she asked how much for these books. So I told her a donation. And she said, how much? And I told her, we don't try to set a donation, a set price. So she looked in her wallet, she grabbed a bill, and she stuffed it in my donation box. And then she walked away. And then as I was leaving, I was collecting all the Lakshmi, and she put in $100. And then there was another couple. I was telling them how every 40 seconds someone commits suicide. So depression, suicide, loneliness, these are all problems of the mind. So these books, they help with that. And she began crying. She told me that her son had committed suicide. He took his own life. So when I told her that these books, they help you to find purpose in life, she appreciated it. And they walked away, and just when I was leaving, she gave me a flower. And then this other guy, he took a set of books, and he gave me a sticker that says, you are beautiful. So anyway, that's my class for today. Thank you for listening. Is there any questions, comments, corrections?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just want to let you know there is a one question pending on the Zoom.
Only one question.
Yes, Bhakti Joseph.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I wasn't going to share, but you brought up the 7 mothers. A year ago today, my birth mother passed away. Timing was perfect, and you mentioned Mother Earth being a mother. And today, everybody's celebrating Earth Day, so that's kind of crazy in a way. But what my question is, what's the similarities between all 7 mothers? Like my mother and Mother Earth, which I love. I climbed mountains. I just left the Rocky Mountains. I was up there for 4 years. And so what's the similarity between all 7 mothers?
They give care and nurture us. Just like they say that the planet Earth is considered the most merciful, because you plant a seed and then she'll grow crops. There's no other planets that do that. And also, anyone that takes care of us, we should consider them to be a mother. I hope that helped. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Govardhan Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. My question is, am I allowed to cultivate personal fame to engage it in the service of the Lord?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure you heard of a famous Mayavadi. When they put money in front of him, he had a picture like he was disgusted. Well, Prabhupada, he said, give me the money, because then he knew how to utilize the money. So if we can use our assets, our fame, our beauty to spread Krishna consciousness, it's glorious. But when we use our assets for the wrong reasons, then we get implicated in karma. But yeah, you should engage everything you have for Krishna service. Krishna will be pleased, Srila Prabhupada will be pleased, and the devotees will be pleased.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Vijay Krishna.
You're welcome.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki